considering, getting somebody else in there.
Do you have any idea, based on your reporting, how serious the discussions, what level they're at, or what the kind of permutations are being discussed?
We understand at this stage it is pretty informal. Some names have been floated, but maybe not even with the president himself. It's not as if he is asking people, what do you think about this person? What do you think about this person? And some people characterize this as just a sort of intense level of venting on his part. So it is pretty early, but in this administration, things move quickly. So,
yeah, is there any timeline that's been discussed to your knowledge?
No, not at all. I don't think the talks are quite that serious that we're going to remove him on X date, just discussing the idea of removing him.
With me now are April Ryan, Ryan Lizza, A.B. Stoddard, Matthew Whitaker, Kirsten Powers, and Mike Shields. Mike, as a supporter of the president, would it be a mistake to remove Jeff Sessions?
I think it would be. I think, there's been a conversation about loyalty a lot tonight, and I think loyalty is a part of this, but I think it's also confidence. And I think the president needs to have confidence in the attorney general. And my understanding is that he's frustrated because Jeff Sessions recused himself from an investigation that hadn't begun. When he recused himself, there wasn't an investigation. Now there is. And so that makes you lose confidence in somebody when they recuse themselves from something that hasn't begun. You may have contributed to the sort of atmosphere that created it. I think Jeff Sessions has to get the confidence of the president back.
How do you do that, though? The communications director, Scaramucci, is saying that they should sit down and have a face-to-face. It doesn't seem like that's something that President Trump wants to do. Jeff Sessions, according to Sarah Huckabee Sanders, was at the White House today, and there was no face-to-face.
Well, it seems like what he wants to do is to stop the investigation. I don't think it's necessarily about Jeff Sessions, because the recusal happened on March 2nd. So, and we're now in August. So obviously something else is happening. And so I think it's more about the fact that he is panicking about the investigation, and particularly probably with the Donald Jr. Emails. So he's trying to figure out how to stop it. And the only way to stop it, he figures, is to get rid of Sessions and to try to start the domino effect of getting somebody in there that he thinks will do his bidding.
That's what's getting lost in this discussion of is he loyal? Can he do it? The President of the United States is trying to undermine the rule of law by getting rid of an attorney general who has done the right thing, followed Justice Department guidelines, and recused himself from an investigation. You said that the investigation hadn't started. The investigation into the Trump campaign's relationship with Russia started last July. So the investigation had started, and Sessions had conversations as a campaign surrogate with Russians. It was a very clear case for recusal. He did the right thing. A lot of people, and he deserves credit for that. What we are watching now is a public machinations by the president to undermine the rule of law at the Justice Department.
But Anderson, this is much deeper than timelines. I understand what you're saying about the timelines, and I understand what you're saying about the fact that he wants to stop the investigation. But if he cannot stop the investigation, he definitely wants to control the investigation. He is very concerned about Mueller, the scope of what Mueller is able to do. And I talked to former U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder today in Baltimore at the NAACP, and he says he's going to come back and start talking in September because he's very concerned with these impediments. He's also saying that we are a nation possibly entering into a crisis. So at issue is Mueller, what Mueller is doing. Yes, Jeff Sessions, they've had this back and forth, and Jeff Sessions did send his resignation in earlier. But the question is, since he and the president don't get along, who did he give that resignation to that the president did not accept the resignation? That's one question. Two, Jeff Sessions, yes, they don't get along, but the issue, why is Jeff Sessions staying? Is he realizing that this situation is bigger than what is on the surface? There are a lot of questions going on in circulating.
But Jeff Sessions not only was an early supporter of the president, also among, a lot of conservatives, among the more sort of nationalistic wing of the Republican Party. Jeff Sessions holds a lot of ideals which are really important to those supporters of the president. And he held those ideas probably before the president himself talked about them.
Which is why the Washington Post is reporting that the president is asking how it will play in conservative media, because he knows there's an army of loyal supporters, fervent believers in how qualified Jeff Sessions is for the job. And the fact, what Ryan said last hour, that he has achieved more for the Trump agenda, for a president short on wins. everything with regard to immigration, criminal justice issues, law enforcement issues, all controversial civil rights issues. He has been over there making changes hand over fist.
I'm not going to say civil rights.
As his agenda, well, it might look like the opposite of civil rights, but the Trump agenda is chugging along at great speed over at the Justice Department. And so Ryan's right. It doesn't have anything to do with the Trump agenda at the Justice Department. It has to do with what everyone said, which is Mueller. The question for people who he's thinking of replacing Jeff Sessions with is, has he already asked Jeff Sessions, and people are concerned about this, to fire Mueller? And Jeff Sessions said no. Therefore, the outburst last week. If Ted Cruz wants to be the step-in, he has to know it's all about firing Mueller.
Yeah, and the biggest challenge right now is you have a Department of Justice that isn't even firing on all cylinders. None of the U.S. attorneys have been confirmed, or very few, and so you have offices that are being headed by interim appointments, since you had most of the U.S. attorneys fired, including Preet up in the Southern District of New York. And so I think this is a Department of Justice that, while the fiasco in Washington is happening, out in the field, they really need some leadership, and they need those U.S. attorneys in place. And to not have an attorney general with the confidence of the president, I think really slows that down and causes Grassley and others in the Judiciary Committee to focus elsewhere where they should be focused on.
So how difficult would it be to get another attorney general confirmed?
Yeah, it probably would be difficult. It probably would have to be a recess appointment if he did it, I think.
I mean, he's going to put the Democrats into the very unusual position of being the great defenders of Jeff Sessions as remaining as Attorney General. And I mean, you can imagine what Democrats will do if Jeff Sessions is fired as a way for President Trump to control the investigation of himself. They will shut down the U.S. Senate. They will not allow someone else to go through.
We're going to continue the conversation after a quick break. We also have some